Baby farming is the historical practice of accepting custody of an infant or child in exchange for payment in late Victorian Britain and, less commonly, in Australia, New Zealand and the United States. If the infant was young, this usually included wet nursing. Some baby farmers adopted children for lump sum payments, while others cared for infants for periodic payments. In Victorian Britain, the circumstances for most unmarried mothers were bleak. They faced a life of struggle caring for their children whilst earning enough to survive, in a society where single parenthood and illegitimacy were frowned upon. Fostering and adoption services were rarely controlled by modern standards. One result was the profitable practice in which baby farmers acted as adoption or fostering agents for an upfront fee from the baby's mothers. Although many baby farmers acted in good faith, the practice was often misused, making it difficult to trace what had happened to the children involved. Worse still, it was often in a baby farmer's financial interest for the children left in their care not to survive. Though baby farmers were paid in the understanding that care would be provided, the term baby farmer was used as an insult, and improper treatment was usually implied. Illegitimacy and its attendant social stigma were usually the impetus for a mother's decision to put her children out to nurse with a baby farmer. But baby farming also encompassed foster care and adoption in the period before they were regulated by British law in the mid-19th century. Wealthier women would also put their infants out to be cared for in the homes of villagers. On the 3rd of February 1903, Amelia Sach and Annie Walters were executed for baby farming. Amelia Sach and Annie Walters will be remembered as being one of the 5 women who were judicially executed from 1903 to 1955 at London, England's Holloway Prison for Women. Amelia Sach and Annie Walters were known as the Finchley baby farmers. East Finchley was an area of London that Walters resided, and her landlord was a policeman who became suspicious of his tenants' activities. The 2 women operated a home for unwed mothers and were paid room and board for the pregnant women and for the placement of the child for adoption after birth. Many times the pregnant woman was a young single servant and the payment was done by her employer. Such as lying in house in the North London suburb was a destination of choice for inconveniently pregnant women for a couple of years at the dawn of the 1900s. And there they could deliver discreetly and pay a surcharge for adoption services to place the child with a family. Except, as the mothers must have understood, few if any of those children were destined to find a doting parent. The transaction was very discreet. Walters was found guilty of murdering of at least 1, but maybe a dozen newborns with a poisonous mixture of laudanum, tincture of cannabis, chloroform and morphine. Amelia Sach operated a lying-in home in Stanley Road and later at Claymore House in Hertford Road, London. Around 1900, she began to advertise that babies could be left and took money for adoptions. The clients, judging from the witness accounts, were mostly servants from local houses who had become pregnant and who had employers who were keen for the matter to be resolved discreetly. There was a charge for lying in and another for adoption, a present to future parents of between £25 and £30. Annie Walters would collect the baby after it was born, then murder it with a poisonous mixture of chlorodyne. In the years 1948 to 1988, chlorodyne was a common pesticide for corn and citrus crops, as well as a method of home termite control. Pathways of exposure to chlorodyne include ingestion of crops grown in chlorodyne-contaminated soil, inhalation of air in chlorodyne-treated homes and from landfills, and ingestion of high-fat foods such as meat, fish, and dairy, as chlorodyne builds up in fatty tissue. Little is known about Walters except she provided some caregiver work. According to the arrest record, Walters was said to be feeble-minded and had a history of alcohol abuse. Sach and Walters were hung the same day and buried on the prison grounds in unmarked graves. In 1971, while the prison was being remodeled, all 5 executed women were exhumed. During their trial at the Old Bailey, the quantity of baby clothes found at Claymore House was used as evidence to indicate the sheer scale of their crimes. The amount of babies the 2 women killed is not known but was estimated to be more than 12 children. Amelia Sach and Annie Walters were hanged on the 3rd of February 1903 by William Billington. William Billington was an English executioner. He was on the Home Office list from 1902 to 1905 and had participated in hangings from 1899. He was a small celebrity during this period among the populace, many of whom wanted to catch a glimpse of this relatively young man who was the country's executioner. Billington carried out the vast majority of executions from 1902 to 1904. He carried out the last one to take place at Newgate Prison on the 2nd of May 1902 and the first at Pentonville on the 30th of September 1902. He also performed a few executions in Ireland. In what was the only double hanging of women to be carried out in modern times. In the 1960s and 70s, thousands of West African children were privately fostered by white families in the UK in a phenomenon known as farming. The biological parents were usually students in the UK who also had a job. They placed ads in the newspapers looking for foster families to care for their children. The baby farming business stood as cover for postpartum abortion in a society exacting penalties legal, medical, and social against single motherhood and terminated pregnancies alike. The solutions an unexpectedly pregnant maid might turn to were all desperate and unappealing. And in the absence of better provisions for orphans and mothers, a significant pattern of infanticide was baked into Victorian England. Thank you for watching Death Row.